Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Got question Chase, has got the facts, talking NFL numbers, he's got your back. A little chart trend ball, man, he's got it like that. Chasing data by do champions. Chasing data applies to everyone. Chasing data, yeah, we're live today. Chasing data for always. Chasing data by do champions.
What's up, everybody? We are here with episode 3, and it's our second episode of our reverse power rankings. Last week we did number 32 and number 31 and talked a little bit of Buffalo Bills. This week we will do number 30 and number 29. 32 was the Titans. 31 was the Raiders. The low of the low. Doesn't get much worse than those two teams at this moment. We've seen some of the combine today. James Pierce had the fastest time out of the defensive linemen. Really strong showing by a few players, some not so much. Look forward to watching more of that as the week goes on. But like I said, we will jump into the next two teams tonight. But before we get started, let's play a little bit of something from our sponsors.
For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollo's, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.
So, like I said, we will jump right into it. Team number 30, not in a great situation. It is the Cleveland Browns. They've spent a lot of money to be ranked this low going into 2025. But here we are. Last season, they were 3-14. They were horrible. Everybody knows. If you don't know much about the Browns, you know about Deshaun Watson and what's going on with him, or what's been rumored to go on with him. Nothing was ever proven, I don't suppose. But like I said, last season they were 3-14. They lost 6 straight and 8 of their last 9 to end the season. So started okay, but then just got worse as the season went on. Kevin Stefanski's still there, surprisingly, as the head coach. Overall, they were 26th, ranked by PFF. So, they were not good on either side of the ball. Stefanski's been there for 5 seasons. Overall, he has right about a 500 record. He's 40-44, which is .476 win percentage. He's had just 2 winning seasons. So, he won Coach of the Year at one point, and then it's kind of been downhill. The team had been average in years prior on offense, and then they were 28th last year. Deshaun Watson, even though he's been bad ever since they signed him, he was even worse in this past year. But we'll get more into that as we go on. Offensive coordinator, they promoted Tommy Rees to offensive coordinator. It was Ken Dorsey. Last season, the offense finished dead last in overall grading. The passing offense was 29th out of 32 teams. The run was 24th, so a smidgen better. Nothing to write home about. Tommy Rees is now the youngest offensive coordinator the Browns have ever had, probably. 32 years old. He was once the Browns' ball boy, so hometown favorite, I guess. But they did say that Stefanski will still be calling plays. Defensive coordinator is still Jim Schwartz. He's entering his 3rd year now. He had the 8th ranked defense last year. Surprising. But most of that was due to the fact that they were number 1 versus the run in their run defensive grade. The problem with that is that they were 29th versus the pass in coverage. So highs and lows. But we'll get more into that. Jim Schwartz likes to run that man defense a lot. So we will see what continues to happen. So, like I did last week, we will get right into the first part, which will be their additions. And to start, we will. Let's see if I can get this to come here. There we go. All right, now we have the mock draft. Everybody does a mock draft. So why not join in on it? They don't have any additions yet. It is early on in the offseason. As you know, we are just now at the combine. Season's only been over about 3 weeks since the Super Bowl. So the first way that they're going to get additions is through the draft. They currently have the number 2 overall pick. They have a lot of picks. They traded a lot away for Deshaun Watson, and they have not got a lot in return, to be honest. They really need to turn it around. I mean, we'll get more into Deshaun Watson as we go on, but if everything stays the same as we are today, they still have Myles Garrett. They still have these numbers of picks. They could add more if they get rid of Myles Garrett. But as of now, they have the number 2 pick. With that said, I believe Travis Hunter will go number 1. There's some that believe Cam Ward goes number 1 to the Titans. But the Browns have the 2nd pick, and I would like to see them take a quarterback, especially Cam Ward. I mean, he's super confident, sometimes to a fault, but I mean, you watch the film, he has poise in the pocket. He's improved his footwork over this season specifically. He's that dual threat that you like to see in a quarterback. He has the arm to make those unorthodox throws. I mean, I think he could be a home run hit for the Browns. They have to do something to move on from their current quarterback situation. 2nd pick, I have them shoring up that offensive line. They have a lot of questions on that line. So I'm taking tackle out of North Dakota State, Gray Zabel. Then they have the 67th overall pick, and here's where they got to improve that backfield, because the backfield was also another problem. We'll get into all the problems they had, but this is just one of the few. So I have them taking one half of that duo out of Ohio State this year in Travion Henderson. He's a good fit, I believe. I mean, the only downside I see with him is that he lacks that size for breaking tackles, and the blocking's not exactly what you want, but he could be a home run threat for this team who needs a jolt on the offensive side of the ball. Like I said, I mean, he could be a home run hit because he does have very good speed. We'll be very curious to see what 40 time he posts later on this week. Then they have a 2nd, 3rd round pick, and they also need to shore up the cornerbacks. Their cornerbacks have been up and down, which we will discuss in further detail. But wouldn't hurt to get a new face in there. Get Dotson out of Kansas. Then they go to the 4th round, have them taking a guard. Again, working on that offensive line. Tate Ratledge. I mean, with that hair, can't go wrong. In the 5th round, have them taking Nick Nash, wide receiver. He's been spoken highly about at times, and there's some downside to him. But just keep it brief. I mean, he did put up numbers last year. He had 104 receptions, almost 1,400 yards, and 16 touchdowns. So again, maybe some more jolt of offense on that offensive side of the ball. Moving on to the 6th round, this is where you start trying to find diamonds in the rough. Have the edge from LSU and Swenson, and then you just have a lot of filler picks in their spots of need. I'm not going to go into detail. I mean, they need stuff in the secondary. They need defensive interior. They may be replacing that pass rush and run stopping ability of Myles Garrett. So they may be taking a few swings at all spots on that defensive line. So now that's that. They don't have any additions. Like I said, they will have some, I'm sure, with the minimal cap space that they have coming up. So as far as their subtractions, this is where it gets interesting. They lose Elijah Moore, who was wide receiver 2. If you want to consider him that, that's up to you. I don't know if he fit the bill for wide receiver 2 with his stat line. They lose James Hudson at left tackle. They have DeJuan Jones, who was, I mean, he was a rookie, but he was showing promise before he got injured. Then he lost a lot of games to injury, and now we have to wait till the 2nd season to see what's going to happen with him. No real promise, I guess, per se. They lose the most exciting thing they had, I guess, maybe, in Jameis Winston. He was 2-5 this year, 61% completion percentage. He had 291 yards per game in his starts, which is top tier for sure. But you do get the highs and lows with Jameis Winston. He is a great motivational speaker. He is a great controller of the microphone. He is a great thrower of the ball at times, especially when you want to be risky. He had 12 touchdowns in those 7 games that he started, and also 12 interceptions. So, like I said, highs and lows. 23 sacks in 7 games, not ideal. He was ranked 24th of 42 qualifying quarterbacks this year. So not bad. Turnovers is what weighed him down. They are also losing a franchise cornerstone over the last few years in Nick Chubb. We have not seen him. They got him in 2018, but he broke out. 2022, he had over 1,500 yards at 5 yards per carry and 12 touchdowns just on the ground. 2023, he played 2 games, and he had that horrific knee injury. Everybody remembers. I believe it was either Sunday or Monday Night Football whenever that happened. And he really has not bounced back since then. He just had those 2 games with 170 yards last year. And then this year, he finally came back. Cleveland fans, I believe the NFL in general, were very excited and hyped up to see what he was going to do once he came back. And not much happened. I mean, the offensive line is part of the issue, yeah, I'm sure. But he did not look like the Nick Chubb of old. Like I said, he did have a brutal injury, but he only totaled a little over 300 yards at 3.3 yards per carry compared to 5 yards per carry just 2 years ago. Did have 3 touchdowns and just a 41% success rate on the ground. Then we get they're losing Deontay Foreman, who showed up in a few games. That's because the running back by committee ended up taking place just basically due to injury. They're losing Rodney McLeod on the defensive side, who wasn't nothing to write home about. They're not really losing anyone that's too good. That is until you get to Myles Garrett. He doubled down today and basically told Andrew Berry that no amount of money is going to keep him in Cleveland. He come out and said a week of the Super Bowl, right before the Super Bowl, that he did not want to be a part of Cleveland's future. It's not in the cards for him. He is done with them. He says they're not building toward a winning culture at this point in time, and that's not where he wants to be. Last year, he had 14 sacks, which is the second most. He had 84 quarterback pressures, the third most. He had 40 quick pressures, and a quick pressure is getting to the quarterback in under 3, or getting to a pressure in under 3 seconds, which is the second most. And by PFF standards, I mean, he still is top tier. He had a 92 plus grade yet again for the 4th straight season. So unheard of numbers. So when you look at what the trade packages are, I mean, it's, in my opinion, it's going to have to be at least 2 firsts. But trading him comes with that hit, dead cap hit. A trade will leave $36 million dead cap if they do it before June 1st. But if it's a post June 1st trade, they split it 15 and 21 million over the next 2 years. So curious to see what happens with that. We'll talk about more as we go. But like I said, they really didn't lose anyone per se that is going to be a game changer on this team. So now we'll talk more about their cap situation. So I have a lot of information here. Kind of a summary of what I'm going over anyways. They have negative $28 million in cap space. While that may seem very alarming for anyone who is a Browns fan, the cap is real and not real at the same time. There is a hard cap, but there is multiple ways they can work around this for sure. They will do a lot of restructures, basically have add some void years to these players. They'll make it work, and they'll have cap space, not as much as you would like, but they will have some. They do have $294 million committed, and then you see that they have almost $52 million in dead cap. Dead cap, that's the players that they are basically paying to not be on their team anymore. The 2 main ones are Amari Cooper, who, if you're a Bills fan, you got to experience him for half the season last year. But the Browns are paying him $22 million in 2025 to not pay. Well, I mean, it's a dead cap hit of $22 million, basically. Can't use that money. Then another $14 million is going to Zadarius Smith. There's a few others, but that's $36 million right there. They owe so much money to so many mid-level players. Their big contracts is not for big names. As I said earlier, Deshaun Watson, he has a $72 million cap hit in 2025. I want to say the salary cap for this year is 279.2. So you're looking at basically a fourth of that cap going to Deshaun Watson, who is probably not even going to see the field the entire season due to his Achilles injury. So with that said, like I said earlier, he had a worse year this year than in 2023 when he was already bad. And he's out for an indefinite amount of time. I don't think anything's been said as to when he would come back. I don't think it's going to be this season because he had the Achilles surgery shortly after he got injured. And then he re-injured, or I don't know if he re-injured it, but he had a complication which led to him having to have additional surgery, I believe. So it's just not ideal right now. Last year, he was ranked very poorly. He had a 1-6 record, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Remember, Jameis Winston had almost 300 pass yards per game. Deshaun Watson, 164. He was sacked 33 times, had the highest sack percentage in the NFL at 13.25%. So that means out of every 8 dropbacks, he's getting sacked on 1 out of every 8 dropbacks. So if he drops back 32 times a game, so that's about average, he's getting sacked 4 times a game on average, no matter what, based on his numbers, which is ridiculous. Cutting him saves $0. Like I said, they will likely restructure and convert that money to get it off the books for this year. Their next mid-level player that they're paying a lot of money to, Denzel Ward. He was ranked 41st out of 116 cornerbacks. He's never been great, even when he signed the contract extension. 2024 was his second worst graded year of his season. He has a $24 million cap hit in 2025. Again, will likely be structured, but we can't ignore what's going on with their salary cap. The Browns could get out after this year and save some money, but I mean, there's a lot of things they could do prior to that. Wyatt Teller, when you look at that offensive line, I spoke on it earlier. Their right guard, he was ranked 44th out of 77. Again, this is a repeat in everything I'm saying. Third worst season of his career. $14 million cap hit, but he is in the last year of his contract, so we'll see what happens with him. And then you have Joel Bitonio, who is mulling retirement at this point. He's in the last year of his contract, $14 million cap hit. Last season was the worst season of his career. Does he want to come back and do this again? Not too sure, but we're still waiting to hear. But again, another huge cap hit for someone who did not really do much for them in 2024. So with that cap situation, you have the other option besides restructuring. You can cut some players and save some money. Some of the cut candidates that I see could be a possibility. Dalvin Tomlinson, defensive tackle, they signed, I believe, 2 years ago. His last 2 seasons were the worst, so they signed him, and he's been downhill since. $14 million cap hit yet again in 2025. Okoronkwo, defensive lineman, a post June 1st cut would be save them $3 million. He's on the books for I wouldn't say a large amount, but it's something that is a worthy amount. And he ranked 116th out of 119 players last year. Juan Thornhill's already gone, so that's one player out of the secondary. And then the other one I'm not worried about, but I'm curious to see what happens is Greg Newsome. See what happens with him. Is he going to be traded? Not really sure. So go back to the depth chart. This is water. And now I want to talk about their strengths. This is about the only high point of this conversation when we're discussing the Cleveland Browns. So the strength as of right now is Myles Garrett. I mean, the pass rush maybe along with him, but how much of that is skewed due to what Myles Garrett is doing on that defensive line? He's drawing at least 2 players probably on every play. So that frees up a lot of one-on-ones for everyone else on the defensive line. They had a highest quarterback pressure rate at 38, a little bit over 38%. Linebacker play was solid. They had Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Talk about him a little more in a second. Devin Bush, who came in, he's bounced around. He came in and actually played much better than he has in other locations. But he's gone. He's a free agent. I mean, they could bring him back, but JOK, which is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. What I'm curious about is what's going on with his injury. He had that neck injury in week 8, and he was out for the rest of the season, and nothing has really been said since he had that injury. It's going to be a question mark going into the season as to if he's playing. Is it? I hate to say this, but is it going to be something that makes him retire? I'm not really sure. But that's a storyline to watch as well, because I mean he's going into his 3rd, 4th year, and he's a key player on that defense, especially if they're losing Myles Garrett. The run D was also solid, pretty good. Numbers are skewed in my opinion. I mean, largely due to the fact that they were behind in just about every game, so teams are running the ball, so the rush yards per game allowed is going to be higher. So not really worried about that. Next thing is Jerry Jeudy's emergence. He came, he was a draft pick by the Denver Broncos, and he exceeded expectations, especially coming to Cleveland. I mean, they traded for him, and they gave up a higher draft pick than I ever would have. And he came in and showed his worth plus more. He had 90 receptions for over 1,200 yards, just 4 touchdowns, but second half of the season, he really showed up and showed out, especially with the quarterback room that they had in DTR and Deshaun Watson. I mean, they had Jameis Winston, who will sling the ball for sure. But he had career highs in receptions and receiving yards, which is saying something on this Cleveland Browns offense. Other than that, I mean, that's about it. Give it up, blow it up, restart this thing. They do have 4 picks in the top 105, so that's another strength if you want to say that. Weaknesses, you can look just about anywhere on this depth chart and find a weakness. So, like I said, it's everywhere. The offense was god-awful. They had the most third and longs in the NFL, which is 3rd and 7 or more yards, at 130 times this season. I mean, that's kind of unheard of. The Cardinals, on the other hand, the team with the least 3rd and longs was the Arizona Cardinals, who had 71. So almost 60 less 3rd and longs, which is ridiculous. So they just got behind the sticks every time they were on the field, and they did not have the quarterback to overcome those ineptitudes on the offensive side. Like I said, I've said it 100 times over, the QB situation, the QB room is horrible. They've had a league-high 40 different quarterbacks since 1999, which is crazy. 40 quarterbacks in 25 years. I mean, you think about the Patriots, who had Tom Brady for a decade plus, Aaron Rodgers a decade. Some teams may go through 4, maybe 5. They've had 40. In those 40 quarterbacks, only 2 of them have finished with a top 14 quarterback rating since 2011. It was Baker Mayfield, and then they let him go. He falters some in Carolina, Los Angeles, and now he's had a resurgence in Tampa Bay. The other one was Jacoby Brissett. They had him, and he was great for their offense whenever they had him. But like I said, he was top 14. Obviously, he was great. That's only 2 out of 40 in 25 years. Horrible. So Deshaun Watson, 63.1 grade last year, not ideal. The other option in the quarterback room currently, Jameis Winston is gone, is Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR. These are the only 2 under contract. DTR, I hate to say it, is no better than Deshaun Watson. I was hopeful for him whenever he was coming out of UCLA, but he posted a 45 quarterback grade last year per PFF. He was 0-3 in his starts. Remember, Jameis Winston had 291 passing yards per game. Deshaun had 165 or so. DTR had 136 pass yards per game. Unheard of in a bad way. 3.89 yards per attempt, thus leading to all the third and longs. That is the second lowest yard per attempt number since the merger in for a season. That's since 1970. So the second lowest out of any quarterbacks with, I believe it was at least 100 pass attempts. So he does not know how to look beyond the linebackers on defense. He had 0 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The inflection of my voice is sarcastic of how horrible he was. You watch the film, the last two, was it week 16, 17, or I think it was 16 and 17. He had, when you watch him on film, it was almost comical at some points because every time he had the ball, it was almost as if he could not stand up straight. Watch the combine today, you see some of these players doing these drills, they're going full out and they slip and fall. But DTR was doing that so much whenever he had to scramble or move around in the pocket at all. It was quite ridiculous. But he had 3 intentional groundings in one game and 4 in 2 consecutive weeks. I mean, did Tom Brady have 4 in 2 years? DTR had 4 in 2 weeks. So the quarterback room is a huge problem. Outside of that, the running back room, yet again, a problem. They currently have Pierre Strong and Jerome Ford under contract going into next year. Like I said, they lose Nick Chubb and Deontay Foreman. And Pierre Strong, no, I have nothing to say about him. Jerome Ford, he showed burst at times, but he wasn't consistent. This team, 94.6 rush yards per game, which was 29th. Again, that's partially skewed to the fact that they were always playing behind. You play behind, you're going to be passing the ball more. It's going to lead to less yards on the ground. And even though Nick Chubb had a 43% or so success rate, the team success rate on the ground was less than 38%. And for those who don't know what success rate is as far as running the ball, if a rushing play is considered successful on first down, if you gain at least 40% of the remaining yards. On second down is considered successful if you gain 60% of the remaining yards. And on third or fourth, is considered successful if you gain the remaining yards to get the first down. So they were successful in less than 38% of the time. So you just think about that, and that is just miserable. Next, we're stuck on these weaknesses. These weaknesses just keep coming with this team, thus their ranking of 30th at this moment in the offseason. The offensive line. The average PFF grade of their 6 offensive linemen that saw the field the most was 50.5. 50 is not average. That is horrible. So they need help all around. Let's put it like this. The quarterback was pressured at a rate of 35.1%. Average, 14th in the league, 35% of the time, they allowed pressure as an offensive line. Yet, they were number 2 as a team in sacks at 66. So what that says to me is that no matter who was back there, mainly Deshaun Watson and DTR, but the offensive line kind of held their own for the most part. Could have been better. Could have been much worse, though. They held their own, and whenever the pressure was allowed, the quarterback did nothing to help them in the sense of extending the play, avoiding sacks, thus them being 14th in QB pressure allowed, but then all the way to number 2 in sacks. So that's on the quarterback to me. More weaknesses. Weapons. Like I said, you got Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman at this point, David Njoku. But honestly, Jeudy and Njoku are their weapons. Njoku said, I believe it was yesterday, or it was sometime recently, he believes they're only a quarterback away from being a good team. He might have said great. I don't know what he said. He lost me after he said they were just a quarterback away, honestly. Because they have a lot more holes outside of that quarterback. It's good to be confident, but it might be to a fault. Like I said earlier, Jerry Jeudy did very well. Njoku was good. Amari Cooper was traded. Elijah Moore had a career low in yards after they traded for him. Cedric Tillman was good for 3 games. Then he had a concussion and was out for 6 games. To me, this kind of screams like, hey, we're bringing somebody else in. It's not going to be a top tier. They don't have the money, in my opinion, to go splurging. I don't know if they want to splurge right now after they gave Deshaun Watson all that guaranteed money. But Darius Slayton, is that a name that could be coming here? 3 years, $35 million or so. I mean, it could definitely help in this wide receiver room for sure. These weaknesses never stop. The secondary. It's not the absolute worst, but it's not good. They had the seventh most yards allowed after the catch over expected. So when they look at a play, they run all these analytics basically that show what's expected for whenever the opposing team catches the ball. So after they caught the ball, the Browns did not do their job at stopping that player once the ball was caught basically. To very simplify it to an extreme amount. They allowed the seventh most yards after the catch over what was expected. They were number one in yards per attempt and EPA per play in 2023. So number one, yards per attempt allowed and EPA per play, expected points added. They dropped from 1st to 23rd in yards per attempt and from 1st to 16th in 2024 with mostly the same players. I mean, it's just kind of unheard of what they're doing. I mean, how much of that is the players giving up, being that the offense was not contributing to the level that they need to? They're putting them in horrible situations. We know Jim Schwartz loves to run a ton of man coverage with that defense. Has that ship sailed? I'm not sure. We will see what happens in 2025. Another interesting tidbit is Martin Emerson. He was a standout player in 2023, in my opinion. He had a 43.8 passer rating allowed whenever he was targeted. He went from 43.8 in 2023, which was his second year, into his third year. You would expect growth or staying the same, because I mean 43.8 is amazing. 43.8 passer rating in 2023 to then go to 100.5 passer rating allowed in 2024. You know, this season can be summed up in one game when you look at this defense. Whenever you saw the games that when Tua Tagovailoa was out for the Dolphins, Tyler Huntley came in. They signed him from one of the practice squads, brought him to Miami, shoved him into that offense. They looked horrible everywhere. They played the Browns, and they scored 20 points. So if you're going to give up 20 points to Tyler Huntley and the Browns, you don't deserve to win more than 3 games. So finally, we move on from all the weaknesses. Plenty of them, for sure. The overall outlook for this team, in my opinion, they need to figure out the Deshaun Watson situation. They still owe him a ton of money. Like I said, it was $71 million cap hit this year. Russell Wilson is still unheard of with that amount, but the Broncos have done something sort of like this where they moved on from Russell Wilson. He had like a $40 million dead cap hit last year. They took it and moved on from him. So they need to figure out how to do that, restructure it, obviously. But what's the future with Deshaun? Do you even want him in this locker room? You know, just you don't even want the distraction, honestly, in my opinion. They need to blow this team up. Just start anew. There's too many holes. I mean, you're so far from competing. I don't know why you would hold on to Myles Garrett. I mean, you could pay him that money, but you could get a lot in return to help jumpstart this rebuild. Like I said earlier, Cam Ward is my pick that I want them to take. They need to draft a quarterback. Don't try to patch this to the I don't know if it's the worst thing they could do. But what I would hate to see them do is try to patch up this quarterback room by bringing in someone mid-tier. And who comes to mind? Kirk Cousins. The Falcons, they're not going to pay him $40 million to be a backup this year. They trade him. They eat a lot of that salary. The Browns barely have to pay anything. Put him in there with Kevin Stefanski. But I don't want to see them do that. I mean, maybe you go from one Achilles torn quarterback to another Achilles repaired quarterback who couldn't even hand the ball off at the beginning of the year in Atlanta last year. Just reset it. spoke on this earlier, but they really don't have a ton of money. So I feel like they need to go, instead of breaking the bank like they did with Deshaun Watson and getting in this hole that they're in now, they need to get some second level, prove it type contracts, second tier free agents. They don't have a lot of money. If people are cut, this offensive line, they could bring in someone the likes of Kevin Zeitler, who was in Detroit last year, played great in that offense. Maybe I think he's projected like a 1 year, $6 million contract. That would be great. Another option on that offensive line is James Daniels, around the same pay. Bring him in. What's the worst that could happen? Isaiah Rodgers at cornerback option. The secondary needs some more man coverage. What could happen? A better year than the other cornerbacks that are currently in-house. Need to do something here. Mecole Hardman, someone that can open it up, take the top off extend the plays, extend the offense downfield. Need weapons. Going into the season with Cedric Tillman as wide receiver 2, not ideal. He's currently projected, I believe, like a 1 year, $3 million contract. Javonte Williams at running back. I mean, the running back by committee in Denver did not do anything. No one took over that role with McLaughlin, Javonte Williams, who was already there, and Audric Estime, who I thought would take over that running back room. But you know what? Sign all these players on prove-it contracts. Put it incentive-laden. Make it to where they have to achieve certain goals to get paid more. Because, I mean, it's a win-win for both sides of this. So moving on, we will look at their schedule. Their schedule at this point, it's not set. We don't know which teams they're playing in which weeks. Basically, we only know their opponents. They have 9 home games, 8 away games. So one positive is that they have one extra home game. Some teams have 8 home games. So we'll run through this and just make quick judgment calls on what we think will happen with this team. Buffalo, no chance. Green Bay, probably no chance of winning. Miami, potentially. Never know what's going to happen with that team. They look better with Tua, but how long is Tua going to be on the field? Minnesota, J.J. McCarthy. Is he going to be there? Is Sam Darnold going to be there? Not really sure who's going to be in that quarterback room. It's a potential that they can win a game. I'm just speaking on looking at what's expected. Anything could happen in any of these games. We are so far out from these games being played. You got to just take it at face value and move on. San Francisco, probably another L. Tennessee, 32nd ranked team, in my opinion, worst team in the league. And they could win this game. Who's going to be quarterback? The meme master in Will Levis? Sure, I don't know. Baltimore, probably not. It is a divisional game. They did beat them this year one time, so anything's possible. Cincinnati shouldn't win that game. The Browns should not win that game. Pittsburgh, depends on the quarterback. So potential win, but again, probably not as we're looking at it as of today. If you had to just pick them if they were playing today, that's what I'm going by. The Bears, another loss. Detroit, another loss. Las Vegas. Hey, now we're talking with these away games. We have Las Vegas. They're in a similar situation. Great pass rusher in Max Crosby. No real quarterback. They have a weapon or two. The Browns have Judy and Njoku. The Raiders have Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. That's a winnable game for the Browns. New England Patriots. They have a lot of holes too. They have no offensive players. Drake May is the entire offense over there. So yeah, that's another winnable game. We're looking at 3 in a row based on this. These opponents listed that they could win between Las Vegas, New England, and then the Jets. Who's the quarterback in New York? The ghost that Sam Darnold saw, maybe. I'm not really sure. No one has been named. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is going to be out the door if he's not officially out the door. I believe that's another $40 million cap hit. Ready to move on from that. Baltimore, again. Bengals again. Pittsburgh again. So we're looking 4 or 5 wins this season. I don't know, as of today. Again, these rankings could change as we move through the offseason, as we get through the free agency and the draft and go forward from there. A lot could change. I mean, what's going to happen with Myles Garrett will be a huge part in what happens next year. So, let's see. We spoke on this earlier, but just kind of to summarize, their top players in Cleveland, it's a short list. Myles Garrett is obviously number one. He's above and beyond just about everyone else on this team. Jerry Jeudy is a great, it might be pushing a very good player. And then Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, JOK linebacker. But is he even going to play? I really don't know what's going on with him. So that's your three players. And with each team, who I think could be an MVP candidate, who could be a most improved candidate. With them, slim pickings. MVP, we'll just say Defensive Player of the Year. Myles Garrett is obviously a possibility with this team. Anytime he's around, he's got a chance to win Defensive Player of the Year. Most improved, any of the cornerbacks. They had a horrible season basically last year. So you look at Martin Emerson, who I spoke on, who had nearly a 60-point increase in passer rating allowed. Denzel Ward, who had a drop-off. Greg Newsome. All of them had their worst or next to worst season in 2024. The pass coverage was a weakness in this defense. Hopefully, they could be most improved on this team just because they have a sense of purpose if they have a new direction to go in 2025 with the help of the offense. They're not just saying, oh, this game's over by halftime every week. So that's all possibilities for most improved players. As we get towards the end of team number 30 in the Browns, their best and worst outcomes for me. Best outcomes, they draft either Cam or Shedeur. There's been a lot of linkage between the Browns and Shedeur Sanders. I wouldn't be surprised if they take either one. Do I want them to take Shedeur at number 2? Kind of iffy. But if they take Cam and then either one of them has like a CJ Stroud or Jaden Daniels type rookie season, we saw what they did in both of their rookie seasons. Amazing. Put up top 5, 8-ish numbers in their rookie season. CJ Stroud did have a sophomore slump. That's partially due to the offensive line, of course. But, CJ didn't have a ton around him in his rookie season. He had decent weapons, but if they can hit on one of those quarterbacks and they could get this season to around 8-9, 7-10, at best 9-8, I think all Cleveland Brown fans should be ecstatic at that point if they get there, and they could work through the Watson cap situation in unison with drafting one of these players and just get out of the dumpster fire, have a sense of direction. Who's been the most promising, if you're a Browns fan, since 1999? Who have you thought the most of in saying, this is our franchise quarterback, this is what we're going to do going forward, and he's going to be here for 10 years? Was it Baker? Johnny Manziel? Nothing that, just comes to mind. They did think Deshaun Watson was probably going to be him based on how he played in Houston, but then he comes to Cleveland. They pay him ungodly amount of money, and he sucks. Worst outcome. I think Cleveland Brown fans are living in the worst outcome at the moment. They either draft another horrible quarterback this year, or they just let the season go and prep for 2026. This is a hard reset. I don't think, or it should be a hard reset, but I don't think that's what they're doing. They've kept Kevin Stefanski. They've kept Jim Schwartz. So I don't see a hard reset coming. They could be the scapegoats, honestly, this year. Andrew Berry is kind of like whatever, I guess. But in the same sense, he's also said that he's keeping Myles Garrett. So don't really know what the plan is there as far as this being a wash of a season. But that's the worst case scenario, is that they just throw the season away. And that's just due to the cap hits that are happening in 2025, and just do a complete reset. It could end up where they win 2 games next year, especially if they don't have a quarterback. The quarterback room is not solved, and they're still struggling week to week to move the ball up and down the field. The defense is going to give up yet again, and we're going to be having a top 2 or 3 pick again going into 2026 for the next draft. One more thing that I want to talk about is drop-off candidates. There's not many on this team, being that no one was outstanding or fits the mold of dropping off this year. If they do bring Devin Bush back, he played at such a much higher level there than what he has in other locations. He bounced around, never found really a home starting position. He was the 9th best linebacker. He had only 500 snaps, but he was the 9th best linebacker, which was, amazing. Is that fool's gold? I don't really know. Maybe he just stepped up. His career depended on it, and again, it was by far his best season as far as grade-wise goes. So he could be a drop-off candidate. Is it going to stay the same, or is he going to regress some? Isaiah McGuire spoke on him a little bit earlier. He's been in the league a few years. He was a much better player in season 2, especially against the run. Is he progressing, or was it a fluke season? He had also about 500 snaps. So we'll see. X factor for this team, outside of the quarterback that they draft, who is the obvious X factor, because that's going to decide a lot for what's happening. I feel like the D as a whole is the X factor, and can they care enough? Can Jim Schwartz get this team ready to play week in and week out? I've hit on it time and again. Man coverage is his thing. They're going to probably stick to man coverage. But the product on the offensive side has to continue to put out something to help the defense out. That's the X factor for me. So in summary, this 2025 season may honestly be a wash. Nothing really to be excited about unless you draft a quarterback. I just want to see what they're going to do with the Deshaun Watson thing going forward. He's not the quarterback of the future. I'd be hesitant to say that this team wins 5 or more games based on where we're at right now and what's taking place as of late, unless they strike gold with the quarterback choices at pick number 2. And to leave you with a glimmer of hope as a Cleveland fan, since they've expanded the playoff situation over the last few years, there's been 46 teams that had 3 or fewer wins in a season. 46 teams, 3 or fewer wins. Out of those 46 teams, only 9 of them, I say only 9, but 9 of them have gone on to win the next season. To make the playoffs the next season. So you look at that, that's about a 20% chance. Hey, if I'm the Cleveland Browns and you tell me I have a 20% chance of making the playoffs, I take it every day of the week. So that concludes what's going on with the Cleveland Browns. They're team number 30. So to recap, we have 32 at Tennessee Titans, 31 Las Vegas Raiders, 30 Cleveland Browns. And for number 29, we have the Giants. A common theme with all these teams is quarterbacks, or the lack thereof, the lack of a skilled player in that quarterback room for the bottom 4 teams. With the Giants, they were also 3-14. They were 2-3 to start the season. They were nearly a 500 team by week 6. You would never think that when you look at them when you look at the whole of the 2025 season. 2024, sorry. But they did, after going 2-3 to start the season, they ended up losing 11 of their last 12. Brian Daboll somehow stays in the city of New York as the coach. The GM undoubtedly believes it was not his fault, I guess. I don't know, more Daniel Jones than him. I don't know. They were ranked 29th overall as a team last year. So again, one of these bottom 4 teams based on every metric that you look at pretty much. Brian Daboll, again, how is he there? I'm not really sure. 18-32-1 record in his first 3 seasons. Kevin Stefanski was 40-44. 18-32-1 here. That's the 36% win percentage. Kevin Stefanski was near 500. 26th. That's the 26th ranked record by any team since he's become the head coach. So they've been bottom 5 basically, besides that first year where they made the playoffs and beat the Vikings in the wild card round. The offense and defense was average in 2022, which is that year that I speak on, when Daniel Jones just, he was more of a run threat and he did not turn the ball over as much. And they beat the Vikings that year. The offensive coordinator is still Mike Kafka. They were 29th in offense, 30th in the pass, 23rd in the run. Nothing great. Unsure how he's still there. One thing of note that plenty have heard is the rumor mill about Matthew Stafford being an option for the New York Giants. We'll speak more on that in a minute, but he is a name that's going around as a possible trade candidate. And to further fuel that rumor, the assistant QB coach is Matthew Stafford's brother-in-law, Chad Hall. So little family there. I don't know. Maybe he hates his brother-in-law. I have no idea. Defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, second season. They were 21st overall last year. Obviously, the defense is better than the offense with this team, especially the front four. They were 23rd versus the run, 27th versus the pass. But unlike my prior three rankings, I wanted to reach out to someone. So I spoke to, you want to follow him on X. His name is Mr. Mr. GHF. And his name is Spiro. And in the meantime, I'm going to play a quick interview that I did with him to get his viewpoint on a lot of the things that I'm talking about. We will listen to what he had to say, and then we'll come back to my thoughts on what he said and compare and contrast our thoughts on the Giants going into 2025. So let's play. What's up, everybody? I'm here with my guy Spiro, kind of feet on the ground in New York, kind of give us a bird's eye perspective of what's going on in New York, instead of me telling you my thoughts. Kind of want to hear it from the source. So as I go through my breakdown tonight, I'm going to start with him and get his thoughts on everything that we have going on. So Spiro, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us where we can find you on Twitter and everything, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely, man. I am part of a trio called New York Revival, and we talk all New York sports. But we are we're majorly a Giants podcast. We, live and die by them. And my name is Mr. Glass Half Full on X. You can find me there. And we like to have fun. We're like at the bar with your boys kind of podcasts. We let it loose. Have a couple beers on the show, and we try to make light of the Giants right now, because what else are we going to do?
Yeah.
But we try to stay positive, but we call it as we see it too. So we've been around for 3 years now. We're live every Tuesday night, and we'd love for everybody to join us, man. We have a good time.
Sure.
So that's all about us.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being on here. My first question for you is kind of wide viewpoint of this. What is the biggest? I know the Giants have a lot of needs, but what do you feel is their biggest need?
Well, I mean, I hate to state the obvious here. Quarterback is the biggest need. It's the biggest need, and it's been the biggest need. Daniel Jones, end of Eli Manning's career, Geno Smith, we went through it all. And it's been the biggest need for a very long time. And it'll be interesting to see, because this year we have options. We have options to fill it. Are they the best options? Probably not. We probably should have stunk a little bit more last year, but Tommy DeVito, he happened, and we are where we are right now. We got Malik Neighbors, which is great, and if we can just get him a quarterback. I know we have a lot of other holes, but quarterbacks fix a lot of holes. They make up for the other holes on a team. They make the defense better. They make the rest of the offense better. And I'd like to see them get it fixed, both in the short term and the long term, because we need two quarterbacks. We need a veteran and a rookie. And it'll be very interesting to see how they play out, because, like I said, there are options, but I don't know which way they're going to go, because we got a desperate GM right now and a desperate coach. It's probably the worst kind of scenario you could be in, QB hell, with a desperate quarterback, a desperate coach, and a desperate GM. So we'll see, man.
Yeah, but like you said, quarterback changes a lot. I mean, that's even, you probably don't want to hear this, within your own division. You got Jaden Daniels, who came in and just completely changed that franchise, and they still have a lot of holes too, I mean, but he has done a lot. But yeah, so to follow up with that, what do you want to do with that first pick? I mean, do you want him to take a quarterback, or
Yeah, listen, I'm a Cam Ward guy, so he's my QB1. If he slips through the cracks and gets to us at 3, I'd love for him to be a slam dunk pick. I like Shador too. I think both of these quarterbacks can stand sitting for at least a half the season, if not more. Like, God willing, in my scenario, which a lot of Giant fans hate, Aaron Rodgers is your starting quarterback. You got a Hall of Famer And listen, we're already a circus. Why not add another show to the circus, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
if he's gonna take it all down, hey, listen, we're probably going down anyway. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be eventful. Aaron Rodgers with Cam Ward as his backup, and if you think about it, Cam Ward has a lot of the kind of same tendencies of that. He's great in the pocket. He makes wild plays. He's got a nice rocket arm. Their play style is a lot alike, and I think you could learn from a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who, by all accounts, is pissed off. He's looking to make one last run. He's still a generational talent. So, in my world, he's going to make vet minimum. Bring him in. Let the rookie come up behind him. If he's got nothing left in the tank, you go to Cam Ward early, or Shadur Sanders, whatever they choose, whoever falls through the cracks. But if they choose the Stafford direction, I'm going a different direction. I want to. He's the investment at that point. If you're trading a 3rd round pick and say another 2nd round pick for him, giving him $40+ million, I want you to help that investment by taking a defensive player, making the team better. So those are my 2 routes, and I'm going the Rodgers route. Rodgers Ward, I'm going to speak into existence.
Honestly, I hadn't heard Rodgers. They talk about him, Pittsburgh. I mean, there's been like the Raiders, all these other teams that are mid-level teams, but I honestly hadn't heard him going to the Giants. That would be interesting for sure. Just watching as a fan. Yeah, definitely would fit the storyline of New York.
Here's the thing.
Yeah,
I'm a Jameis guy. I'm a Florida State fan. So if it's not Rodgers for me, same plan. Get Jameis in here. Let's have fun. Let's get some good quotes. Just chuck it around, and he'll be good for the team morale, I think, and we need a little bit of that. James Love.
And they had a video of him going around during the Super Bowl where he was saying that New York was like one of his destinations that he would like to go to. So,
listen, it makes sense. He would be a rather cost-controlled option. That he is not going to prevent you from drafting another quarterback, and I think he'd be a good mentor. He's all about the team. He's all about good vibes. Those are things that we need here in New York, because Lord knows we're missing it, man.
But I agree with you. Like, they definitely need someone to come in and start week 1 that's not Cam or Shador, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Just give them a few weeks at minimum. But I'm curious to see. I just hope they don't do whenever they drafted Daniel Jones way early and like somehow pull like Jackson, get Dart in the first, pick number 3, just blow everybody away. But
I'm not putting anything behind it. Like, whatever decision we've made in the past, 5 or so years, it seems like it's been the wrong decision. So, I truly think I trust in Brian Dable. I think he has an eye for talent. He wanted Jaden Daniels. If you remember Hard Knocks last year, he was caught saying, "I want Jaden Daniels." He wanted Drake May, so I know he knows what he wants. And I'll die on this hill that I think Daniel Jones is kind of forced on him. If you read any of his body language on the sidelines, he's never liked Daniel Jones. But you couldn't make a change after he made the playoffs in 2022. They weren't in a position to draft one. There was nobody in the free agent market, so he was stuck with him. But I want to see him get one more quarterback, give him one more shot to mold somebody, and I hope they get that shot, man.
Yeah. How early do you want them to take another playmaker? I mean, they have Wan'Dale as wide receiver 2 at this point, so.
Yeah. So you're talking offensive playmaker. You know what? Sorry. It's I want to see, listen, first 3 rounds, I'd like to get a wide receiver. Here's the problem. There's so many needs, it depends who we draft at 2, 3. And if, in my opinion, if it's quarterback at 3, you got to go defensive tackle at 2, because that's the best part of this draft. It's defensive tackle heavy. Running back heavy. Get another running back later on. And I want to see them sign a free agent, a big time free agent out there to shore up that wide receiver 2, hole. You still have Hyatt, you still have Wan'Dale Robinson. You get a wide receiver 2 veteran in there with a little size to him, that's what this group is missing. You shore up spend big on that right guard spot, because that's another big spot. And you have a semblance of a good offense, because Tyrone Tracy had a good year. You pair him with another running back. Good offensive line, some semblance of quarterback play, a wide receiver 2 with Neighbors. You could have yourself a pretty decent offense if you really try hard to look through the trees.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that. I mean, you could speak a bit more to this, but I feel like that defense wasn't as bad as they were last year. I mean, they were playing behind the entire season, and probably by the second half of the season, they had given up based on what they see on the offensive side. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we talked about hole, quarterback covering for other holes. You keep the defense off the field if you have a good quarterback. You get first downs and they keep them fresh, and you get up in games instead of down games. And you're right. That's what they were worn down by the end of the year. They lost Dexter Lawrence. Some guys took step backs. And that's where we were, man, by the end of the year. Toast.
For sure. Do you think there's like an X factor on this team that could like flip the script outside of QB? Obviously, I mean, that's the obvious X factor. But I mean, is there somebody you think that could change the season, add a win or two?
Well, listen, outside of the obvious star players doing their job, which that's obvious. I think DJ Banks, who was our first round pick 2 years ago, it just he had a good rookie season and then took a major step back where we pushed him into the CB1 role his year 2, and he just wasn't ready to handle it. Immaturity, new system, call it what you want, whatever it was. We need him to get back to first round pick Deontay Banks. And if that happens, the defense gets better. I do think they're going to go for another CB in a free agent market. Actually, I want your boy Paulson Adebo. Is that the last name right? Adebo, I know he had the injury, but that's a guy I would like to target. Young player on the rise. And if Deontay Banks gets back to what made him great and making plays on the ball, you got a good front seven and you got a nice secondary at that point, and you can get a good defense which will make plays and make changes in the game, man.
Yeah. Do you think they need a LB2 behind Okereke? I mean, draft that. I mean,
yeah. I mean, listen, we had a rookie, a young player in there, Michael McFadden, who has been serviceable. He's he's just limited athletically, so he's okay. But they could stand for using another linebacker in there somewhere to help out, preferably against the run, because we were just getting shredded on the ground. We need to beef up on the edges. We need to beef up on at the linebacker group. Give Okereke help. In my opinion, I think they do need a run-stopping edge to set the edge, because anybody that played the Giants, you just ran in the edge all day long. Run away from Dexter Lawrence all day long. Run away from Okereke. And they need to learn how to set the edge again, get a thick boy in there, and just stand his ground like a Jihad Ward that we had here. And that's what's going to get this defense back into the upper echelon. Stop the run first, then you worry about everything else.
Yeah. One other thing I just thought of, I mean, we saw what happened last year in the draft where quarterbacks were going like 6 in the first 12, I believe it was, or something along that. So in the event that like Tennessee and Cleveland 1-2 go QB, would you rather Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter?
It's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah.
I really like Travis Hunter. I'm just worried we wouldn't be able to fully take advantage of his just freakish ability. I really prefer him at CB1 in my opinion. But I think he could be a great wide receiver too for the Giants if he came in and was the wide receiver 2 to Neighbors. That's a great combo. But I worry about how that's going to work out. I don't know. Like, if he was just a wide receiver, I wouldn't take him at 3. If he was just a CB, I wouldn't really take him at 3 either. The combination of him as a player makes him like that good, but I don't know if he's elite, truly elite at each one. He wouldn't be our wide receiver 1. He'd be our CB 1, but is he a true shutdown corner? Like, I don't know. He's in my opinion, he's not physical enough to be a true shutdown. Great player. But so I'm leaning more towards the Abdul Carter and even Mason Graham. And Mason Graham is a game changer, and you stack him up next to Dexter Lawrence, and good luck. Good luck running. Good luck. Pick your poison, because Zachary could rush the quarterback, and he could play the run. So kind of a little bit it's like let's build this ferocious front seven and get after the Eagles, because that's the only way we can get after the Eagles. They just bully us up front all the time. So Abdul Carter would be my 1, Mason Graham would be my 2, and I'm not gonna lose any sleep if Travis Hunter ends up being the pick either. But that's my order personally.
I got you. I feel like all Giants fans may just completely spiral if they don't end up with Cam or Shador, though. At
You
3.
know what? It's interesting because as we do, we're very split on which quarterbacks we like.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are pro Shador, and there's a lot of people that are pro Cam. And listen, I think at the end of the day, I need one of them. I really need one of them. I just, like I said before, I want to see Dable get a shot with a competent young quarterback and see him mold it. And even if he gets fired at the end of the year, I trust that he's put enough work into this young quarterback that's going to lead to success going forward. So get him a quarterback one way or another. And I think Shador is going to be there. I have this gut feeling Shador is going to be there. Personally, I'm hoping somehow Cam slips through the cracks. Carter goes one. I don't know. Hunter goes 2, and then we have a choice at somebody at 3. Who knows, man? But give me Cam, please.
No Sam Darnold. No Sam Darnold for 160 million.
Listen, there's some people that are made for New York, and Sam Darnold, he just ain't it, dude. He ain't it. And you saw him crumble a little bit. And listen, it's funny because I actually like Sam Darnold. Coming in 2018 draft, when it was him or Barkley, I was on the Darnold train. And I truly think in another scenario, if he came up, with a different team, with different quarterback coach, different offensive coordinator, he would have a different career right now. We'd look at him differently. But Sam's just not for New York, and he's going to be too expensive for us, in my opinion.
I mean, and I mean, he, like you said, he crumbled in the playoffs. I mean, the line in New York's not competent enough to put him behind it. I mean, it's just
agreed,
not functional.
He's also throwing to Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and Hawkinson. So he had a perfect setup there. So you ain't gonna get that in New York.
No. Last thing I want to ask you before you go: what's your most realistic bet? You can do it, whichever one you want to do first. Best and worst outcomes that are realistic, not going 17-0, obviously, but
Listen, I'm Mr. Glass half full. I see the bright side and everything, but it's hard for me to see a best case scenario of anything more than 8 wins. Like our schedule is just too damn hard right now. I don't know how we have the first, third pick, yet we have the first hardest schedule. I don't understand how that works. You got guys on the hot seat right now that need to win. So it's going to be the trickiest offseason, because they say that they don't want to throw a Hail Mary and just go all in on this year and set the franchise back. But they kind of need to get wins in a season with the schedule is just so difficult. So if they get their veteran quarterback, if they get a Stafford or a Rodgers, and they draft well, they spend money smart in free agency, I still think, let's call it 9 wins. If 9 wins, if they get everything, if they hit home run, grand slam type of offseason, sure, 9 wins. The bottom half of that is another top 3 pick, another 3-win season. You could see total implosion at some point. Like you could see them going in on Shedeur Sanders, maybe sign the wrong free agents. They throw Shedeur in there. He looks overwhelmed. The offensive line still isn't fixed. They fire Brian Dable and Joe Shane midseason, and you could just see it just totally explode. And John Mara, there'll be torches outside for him to sell the team. There was already planes last year. How are we going to overdo that? Overtake that? No, but it could get ugly in New York, and I could see, without a doubt, a 2-3-win season. That's as sad as it is to say.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, I'm hoping for the best just as an outsider watching the Giants. I kind of pull for the underdogs. I want to see them bounce back, but
it's so weird to talk about the Giants like this. Like I just turned 40. My best sports days were in the 20s and in mid 2000s. Like my 20s were just electric. Seeing 2 Super Bowls, and we made the Super Bowl in 2002. We were one of the premier franchises in the NFL for as long as I lived. And then the last decade, 15 years, 10, 15 years, since we let Tom Coughlin go, it's just been downhill ever since, and we can't get it right. Now we are the Browns. Now we are the Jets. Now we are talked about as laughingstock franchise in the NFL, and it just, thank God I have my 20s. Let's just say that. Thank God I have my 20s. I got that in my memory. You can't take that away from me. But it's sad, dark times in New York, man. And I'm hoping we hit rock bottom. I hope there's nowhere to go but up from here.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you jumping on here and giving me your 2 cents on what the Giants can do to make things better.
Absolutely.
Like you said
Thanks
at
for
the
having me.
beginning, you could, yeah, for sure. Follow him on X at Mr. MISTERGHF, glass half full.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you. New
again,
York Revival, shout out my boys. And we'd love to have you guys come join us. And again,
Sure.
thanks for having me. It's great talking to you, Chase, man. It's been fun.
Sure, man. All right, talk with you later.
Later, man.
All right. So that was my interview with Sparrow, Mr. GHF on X. So definitely can give him a follow if you'd like. So that was his thoughts as a Giants lifer. Loves the Giants, and gave some real insight on what he wants to see happen in New York and what he thinks will happen. But with that said, we'll go back to my thoughts and we'll compare and contrast like what he had to say. It's kind of like the same thing. So like I said, we're 32 Titans, 31 Raiders, 30 Browns, and now 29 the Giants. And now that I think about it, the bottom 3 teams are 3 AFC teams. So this is the lowest ranked NFC team in my opinion. So let's see. Let's go into the additions of quote unquote additions. So we'll do our mock draft for the Giants. Here we are. So I don't know if you like this or not if you're a Giants fan. The problem here is obviously pick number 3. I am afraid this may be what is going to happen. So thus far, I have the Titans taking Travis Hunter at number 1. I don't think they're overwhelmed with taking either Shador or Cam Ward at number 1. Browns take Cam at number 2, and then the Giants are almost stuck having to take Shador at number 3 because they have to have a quarterback of the future. They have to have somebody. And as you can see, PFF has him ranked 47th on their big board, so they give this an F grade, taking him number 3. The Giants did take Daniel Jones a few years back, took him super early, much earlier than what one would assume he should have gone. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I mean, let's talk about the positives. I mean, he does have, I say positives, but I mean, his arm talent is the question mark. Mentally, great player. Knows what's going on on the mental side of the ball. But I mean, he does take care of the ball. That's a positive compared to what we've seen out of giant quarterbacks of the past. Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock. He can scramble because you think about that Colorado offensive line. He was moving nonstop, and in Colorado, every play it seemed like he was trying to stay alive. He had nothing but a lot of problems in that backfield for sure. He's very accurate. It's like he and Cam Ward are day and night in a lot of ways. He's the quarterback who's the pocket presence, who doesn't have the big arm but can make the accurate throws. Cam Ward, more of a dual threat, I would say, and has the big arm, maybe less accurate than Shador. But on the positive end of that, Shador had a school record pass yards last year, 3,200. And completion percentage at over 69%. So, like I said, he's accurate. Takes care of the ball. What do the Giants need? Someone who can take care of the ball. At 3, I don't know, but here we are. He had 27 passing touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. This is all with horrible protection. I mean, he had a horrible offensive line, and he put up these amazing numbers. He does have 4 wide receivers that are trying to be drafted this year, so he did have talent around him as well as far as weaponry, just not in the trenches on the offensive line. In the second round, I have them taking Siobhan Ravel. I did also have him mock going to the Titans, so I believe either team could take him. Both teams need cornerback. It might have been the Raiders that had him being mocked to. But anyways, regardless, fast player. Injured last year, but he has the length at 6'3". I am very excited to see what he's going to do at the combine. What is he even, if he's even there? I don't know if he's even there. Sorry. He's very physical at the catch point. with that big frame of his, 6'3", wingspan, top tier 2 as far as the cornerback goes. He could be CB1 on this team from day one on the Giants. We will get into their secondary and the woes that is their secondary as we continue. Third round, got to shore up that offensive line. Cameron Williams out of Texas. He's good in the run game. Pass protection is his weakness, though. But in the third round, I think he's worth a shot, taking him at 65 overall. But he moves really well for his size, in my opinion. Move on to the fourth round, Mason Taylor, son of Jason Taylor. LSU tight end, top end speed. He's an all-around tight end, in my opinion. He can pass and run block with the best of them, for sure. Going on, we're going to go in the fourth round and take another secondary player in Billy Bowman Jr. out of Oklahoma. What can go wrong? Take the fifth round, moving on, take another someone else to shore up that offensive line. Seventh round, we have 2 picks for the Giants. Will Shepherd, one of those Shedeur Sanders weapons that I spoke on earlier. And then in the 7th round, getting towards the end of the draft, Tommy Hill. ESPN has him ranked as the 10th best cornerback. So if you get the 10th best cornerback out of this group in the 7th round, sure, especially when your cornerback room is as bad as it is or as it was in 2024. So let's look at their depth chart. All right, so 26 players that were on this team in 2024 will not be here in 2025. They may not have been there the whole entire season, but they will not be there in 2025 for sure, more than likely. Starting with the offense, you have Darius Slayton, who is ranked 106th. I mean, I thought he had a better season than that, but numbers don't lie. Drew Lock was ranked 40th out of 42 quarterbacks. I mean, they had Daniel Jones. I say he's a loss, but I mean, he's not really a free agent because he was already let go mid-season. They do have that cap money that we'll speak on in a minute, but we're talking about Drew Lock right now. You have the highs and you have the lows of Drew Lock. He was ranked 40th of 42 quarterbacks, but he did have that one amazing week against the Indianapolis Colts, where he was 17 of 23 passing, 309 pass yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 1 rushing touchdown, perfect passer rating, game of his career. When you look at the other 4 games that he took part in, we went from 17 to 23, which is high 60s in completion percentage, I believe, to 56% completion percentage. Went from 309 yards in that game versus Indy to 190 yards in the air, through the air per game. 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 1 rushing touchdown. But that perfect rating that he had in week 17 dropped all the way to a 60.7 rating in those other 4 games. That's the Drew Lock we know. Him and Geno Smith, they had that great interaction whenever he was in Seattle last year, I believe. Outside of that, in week 17, and him singing, I believe it's Put On the sidelines while in Denver, those are the highlights of his career. Everything else is a low light. Also, Tommy DeVito is a free agent. When you continue to look at this offense, their right guard, Greg Van Roten, he was ranked 42nd out of 77 guards. Not ideal. They had some other guys that they're Chris Hubbard, offensive line, 250 snaps. Stinney's gone 200 snaps. This is depth that they've lost, not great players by any means. We go to the defensive side of the ball. Azeez Ojulari. Him and BJ Ojulari, 2 names. BJ got hurt, I believe, last year in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. Not a good year for Azeez. I mean, he had, I believe it was like his 2nd year, he was looking a little better, but I mean, he's been replaced on this defensive line, so nothing really lost. The punter is lost. Top tier player. Patrick Johnson is lost. The thing about him, he is not a good player. He's not a household name, but the problem is he played 47 snaps. They paid him $3.6 million, so that's good that he's off the books. Isaiah Simmons they brought in. I mean, it was another failed attempt at trying to make him a great or serviceable player, I guess you could say. Adoree Jackson is the one on the defense that stands out to me. He was ranked 38th amongst cornerbacks this year out of 116. I think you have to bring him back. He did not have an interception, but that interceptions aren't everything. But on this defense that is lacking true talent in the secondary, you have to bring back what you can, in my opinion. So that's the subtractions of note for this team. We will look at their cap situation, kind of like how we looked at the Browns earlier. 45 million cap space, which is the 13th most, so reasonable amount. Dead cap, not ideal. 27 million, could be worse, could be much better. Daniel Jones is taking up the bulk of that 22 million in 2025. 5 million, I mean, Giants fans may forget that they even had Darren Waller at this point. 205 million is committed, which is the fourth lease, which is decent. I mean, pretty good whenever you had one of the worst records in the NFL last year. And they don't really have many terrible contracts as of now. A majority of the team is intact for 2025. That's what I'm looking forward to. I mean, what to watch for going forward. As far as cut candidates for this team, defensive line, Nunez Roches, if they cut him, they would save $3.6 million, have a $1.5 million dead cap hit. Another one that I find interesting that you don't really hear much as far as cuts go is Graham Gano, the kicker. He is mid-30s, I want to say. He's up in age for sure. 3.2 save, $2.5 million dead cap. I mean, he's old at this point, especially for kickers standards. By kickers standards, kickers come a dime a dozen. I mean, I say that, but I mean, like, they switch them out what almost seems weekly at this point in the NFL season. So, I mean, he's older. He's old for a kicker. Move on from him. Save every dollar you can. So let's go back to the depth chart. So not much really going on with their cap situation. When you look at their strengths on this team, we all know the strength. It's outside on the offensive side of the ball, I should say. Malik Neighbors, 109 receptions, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's amazing for any wide receiver, much less a rookie. LSU, the wide receiver factory. He's the third ever Giant to put up that line at any point in their career. He's the first rookie to ever do that, and only the second rookie ever to have that stat line or better. The other one being Anquan Bolden. Another strength for this team is the defensive line. They had the 7th best pass rush, 8th most sacks at 45. Dexter Lawrence is the focal point of that defensive line. He was the 3rd best defensive lineman per PFF. 10 sacks, which is the 4th most by a defensive interior last year. Another strength to me is not having Daniel Jones. You don't have to go back to that. You know what is going on there or what is not going to be going on as far as how that goes for them. But then we move on from the strengths and we look at the weaknesses. They have no quarterback. The only two are no, I believe they actually do not have a quarterback in the quarterback room at this point. Drew Lock's gone free agent. Tommy DeVito's gone free agent. Daniel Jones was let go last year. So with that said, one option that I would like to see, we'll talk about more, but Justin Fields. He could run that 2022 version of this offense as a bridge quarterback, but I don't know if you really want that if you are looking for someone like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or even Dart out of Ole Miss. That's kind of a change in the pace as far as the quarterback goes with what would be a run-heavy offense. So I'm not really sure if he's the one, but he would be a cheap option. The offensive line is a weakness. 28th in pass block. Evan Neal, who is like almost, I want to say, the scapegoat for this team. He was bad, but he's not as bad as he was portrayed by most people. Keep going with this offensive line. Most of the line, if you look at them, they're coming back. They did allow the 6th highest quarterback pressure percentage at almost 38%. I did, coming into this, I thought, don't spend a lot of money on Trey Smith because you don't want to overpay to solve one problem because the offensive line is as good as this weakest link. And there's still glaring holes in this offensive line. So I wanted them to spread the wealth. But now that Trey Smith has been franchise tagged, by the Kansas City Chiefs at almost $26 million a year. They have a lot of work to do with their cap as well. We will move on from that saga of trying to franchise tag him. They have no weapons outside of Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy. That's it. I mean, if you want to consider Tyrone Tracy a weapon, Wan'Dale Robinson is currently wide receiver 2, which is not ideal. In my opinion, I kind of want to see them bring back Darius Slayton on, if they could get him on a cheaper contract, 3-year, 30 million maybe. I don't know. Just have someone in the building who you kind of know what you're getting at this point. You're going to be drafting talent, I would assume. But if you can bring back Slayton on a cheap contract, you kind of need to at this point. Jalen Hyatt hasn't really shown much yet. So we'll see. Back 7 outside of Bobby Okereke is a weakness. They were 27th in coverage. They allowed 7.7 yards per attempt. One problem, like I spoke on Adoree Jackson earlier, not having any interceptions last year. They had 15 takeaways the entire season. That's less than 1 per game, which was 28. So that's a weakness. Who I would like to see them bring into the fold, into the secondary, would be Adoree Jackson. Paulson Adebo, the cornerback out of New Orleans. He's a free agent now. He's just 25 years old. He is not going to be making the most money. DJ Reed, Carlton Davis, maybe. There's a few other names, but I would like to see them sign him out of that group. He's 25 years old and could be CB1 as soon as he gets to New York. As far as outlook for this team, as an overall grand look for them, I feel they desperately need a sense of direction going forward. Outside of 2022, it has just been downhill. 2023, 2024. I almost expect Brian Dable to swing for the fences because he has to keep his job at this point. He has to show some grand improvement, I do believe. He has nothing to lose. But on the other side of that, I almost wonder if he's going to try to tie himself to a quarterback, a la Shedeur Sanders. And if he can show some promise or make some promise or strides with him, he could get another 2 years or so out of this contract. Or maybe like Kevin Stefanski, they are the scapegoats going into 2025. But with that said, they need a quarterback regardless. I mentioned Justin Fields. I don't know if he's the best option for a bridge quarterback. I mean, assuming that they draft one going into the draft, the 2025 draft. But outside of Justin Fields, maybe Jameis Winston. I mean, he will at least throw the ball. We didn't see many downfield throws. It seems like, I don't know, Malik Neighbors took a lot to the house, but how many of those were deep throws? Jameis will do that for you. He already spoke on the fact of wanting to be in New York at one point. So, hey, he has mutual interest. Especially, he could definitely be more of a bridge quarterback than Justin Fields while you're waiting for the rookie. I mean, is it 4 games, 6 games, the entire season? Sure, whatever, instead of throwing the rookie into a bad situation. What I don't want them to do as a Giants, if I'm a Giants fan, is trade the number 3 pick for Matthew Stafford. Is the number 3 pick number 3 talent? Not necessarily. Trade back. I mean, do something. I mean, maybe you can trade back and pick up at least one more pick. I don't know. Somebody else may want Shedeur more than you if Shedeur is there at 3. But I don't want them to trade the number 3 pick and tie themselves to Matthew Stafford, for who has already come out and said that he wants $50 million a year in a new or I guess it's rumored. I don't know if it's confirmed, but $50 million a year is the rate at what he's wanting with that new contract, supposedly. I would not tie myself to him, especially at this age. I mean, he may be hitting the wall at any given moment. There's also I read earlier that Aaron Rodgers has interest in becoming a New York Giant. That might be better than Matthew Stafford, like Sparrow said in the interview, but I don't know if you want the drama associated with that. They need secondary. Another player outside of Paulson Adebo that I've seen them linked to is Byron Murphy. He had that resurgent season in Minnesota this past year. I would totally be fine with that based on what they have in the secondary now. Bring him or either Paulson Adebo in to shore up that back 7. Great. Offensive line needs. There's plenty of free agent options. like I said earlier, don't need to break the bank. Just shore up that offensive line, get some depth, slight improvements. Weapons. Need weapons for sure. Like I said, they were linked to Paulson Adeba. I'm not sorry, Byron Murphy. If they go get Byron Murphy, it's probably not going to break the bank. They still have more money. Do they go spend more money on weaponry in the likes of Chris Godwin? I mean, give him a 3-year, $40 million, no, something around 45, 50. I don't know. I want to say he would come back. Depends on how healthy he is after that gruesome injury that he had midway through 2024. So that's someone, I mean, you want to put this new quarterback that I assume that they will have is if they go through this draft and don't even draft a quarterback, Giants fans may spiral and riot at the same time. But they want to put the new quarterback in a spot to succeed. You want to have the weaponry around him. You want to know what you're getting out of this quarterback, because if he comes in and struggles and he doesn't have weaponry, you're going into 2026 thinking, is it the quarterback? Is it because he didn't have the weapons that he needed this season? So, I mean, it's pretty much the same team outside of the quarterback position, but how much is that's going to change what happens in 2025? We'll see. So when we look at their schedule, again, this is the same thing that was going on with the Browns. We know their opponents. We don't know when they play these players. So with that said, Dallas, home game. I mean, they could win one of these two. I mean, they play them twice. Let's give them the win at home. Philadelphia, no. Washington, no. We're taking this on face value, like I said, with the Browns earlier. I mean, based on what's happening today. Green Bay, probably not. Minnesota, depends on who's quarterback. What's happening with Sam Darnold, J.J. McCarthy. Kansas City, no. The Chargers, probably not. The Niners, probably not. We split the series with Dallas. Eagles, no. Commanders, no. Chicago, possibility. I mean, how much was it? The offense in general and the offensive line in Chicago, and how much of that was Caleb Williams? I don't know. So it's a possibility they win there. Denver, probably not, but possible. Detroit, no. And then we're with the Las Vegas, New England, New Orleans. These are all winnable games if you're a Giants fan. Las Vegas, they're similarly struggling like you are at this moment in time. You also have the Saints, who are struggling with their cap situation, to say the least, especially with their roster aging as it is. And the Patriots, they have a lot of holes as well. So there's 5 winnable games for sure. Could be more, could be less. Who knows? Going back to their depth chart, like I did with the Browns, they actually have more top tier players than what the Browns have, I would say. The defensive line's pretty good. They have Dexter Lawrence, top tier defensive interior player. Brian Burns, who is good. The Panthers let him go, but he was solid for them last year. Malik Neighbors, who could be a top 5 wide receiver this year for sure, especially based on the campaign that he put up in his rookie season, where he was injured for a few games. So those numbers, 100 plus reception, 1,200 yards, and 7 touchdowns, were not even on a 17-game stat line. Andrew Thomas is one of their top players for sure. It's going to be interesting to see how he comes back from that Liz Frank injury, the foot injury that he had. He's a top player for them. MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. We're not going to say MVP. Sexy Dexy. He is definitely one option for sure. If the team can be good and he can stay healthy, I mean, he's a top 5, top 3 defensive interior player, so he could definitely disrupt the game. But the team has to be good, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Malik, depends on who they get in there. Quarterback could definitely be an option at Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, based on what he did his rookie year. Most Improved Player. Again, anybody in the secondary, just because they were so horrible last year, they could definitely bounce back and be much better this year. Like Sparrow spoke on Deonte Banks, can he be worth that first-round investment that he was 2 years ago. He's now going into his 3rd year, so it's kind of now or never. Evan Neal, I spoke on earlier, he's not great, but I believe he gets more of a blame than what he should. When you look back at his numbers, his rookie year, he had a 42 PFF grade. He had 39 pressures on 700 snaps, 7 sacks allowed. Move forward to 2023. 40 PFF grade, so a little bit worse, 42, 40, 29 pressures on 500 snaps, 2 sacks. Last year, he only played 500 snaps, but he had 17 pressures, so the pressure stayed about the same, but he only allowed 2 sacks, and his overall grade went from a previous high of 41.8 up to 61.2. So, I mean, he was at best serviceable for the Giants last year. He could be better. I mean, they took him. He was a first-round pick, right? So, I mean, he could be better for sure, being drafted in the first round in 2022. But he could be worse. He could be those first 2 years. So, see what happens in this year. He definitely has to do better to get that 5th-year option, that's for sure. Best and worst outcomes for this team. I mean, it's kind of the same as the Browns, where they have to get that quarterback room solidified going forward. They need someone that can direct them into the future. They need someone who's going to focus more on Malik. I believe it was week 12 when they played the Bucks in New York, and it was it Tommy DeVito? I believe Tommy DeVito was starting then, and that was one of the games where Malik Neighbors had 0 targets in the first half. If you have Malik Neighbors, there is no excuse if he is on the field for him to have 0 targets for the entire first half. I don't care if he's triple covered. Throw it up to him at some point. You're not gonna have a chance at anyway if you give him 0 targets. He did end up finishing the game, I think, like 6 for 80. Maybe he had a touchdown. I don't know if he had a touchdown, but they did get him more involved in the second half. But that can't happen where he goes an entire half. So he needs to be the focal point, obviously. Again, I don't want them to end up with Stafford. I mean, that's the best outcome for me. Don't try to patch this sinking ship with Stafford and turn it into an 8 or 9 win team that in 2 years you're still going to need a quarterback. I don't know how much that changes things for your team going forward, especially at $50 million a year. Get Cam, Shador, Dart. I mean, just take a swing at this point. You have nothing to lose if you're Brian Dable, and aim for 7-10. 7-10 finish is the best outcome for me. The worst outcome is you break the bank for Stafford. You lose the number 3 pick in the process. Stafford hits a wall. He's aging, and this team is having another top 5 pick again next year. You owe Stafford after you're owing Daniel Jones, and everybody wants out. Players, especially, is what I'm saying. It's kind of like the Panthers where they started losing players, and they had to ship out CMC, ship out everybody. Brian Burns. They have no household names going into last year. Derek Brown gets hurt. That's another story. Anyways, staff is fired, and you're really rebuilding then instead of starting the rebuild now. Don't go for Matthew Stafford. Drop-off candidates for this team. I talked about him being a possible most improved player, but he's also a drop-off candidate in my opinion, and that is Deonte Banks. If he continues to be bad, and his career may be over as a serviceable player, a player who sees 750 plus snaps a year. The X factor for this team, outside of the quarterback, obviously it's the quarterback. The X factor on every team is pretty much the quarterback. But outside of the quarterback is Tyrone Tracy to me. He had flashes last season in games where he had 8+ carries, because this is talking about more of him being a bell cow running back. In games where he had 8+ carries, his averages were he had 761 yards on 167 carries in those games. That's almost 4.6 yards per carry, which is solid. His 17-game numbers would be almost 1,200 yards on the ground. I mean, you take that if you're a Giants fan, I would believe, especially if he's your go-to running back. I'm just curious to see if he can be that bell cow running back. Can he be a 3-down running back for this team? Devin Singletary is, I don't know if he's there this year. Not really sure. It doesn't really matter. in my opinion. But I want to see him more, Tyrone Tracy, more as a receiving threat also. He had 3+ receptions in just 5 of the 17 games last year. So expand his role. So in summary, with this team, like those ranked below them, it depends so much on if they can hit at quarterback. There's a lot of quarterback needy teams, but not a lot of quarterbacks available for these low ranked teams. They have 0 quarterbacks in the quarterback room right now, and they desperately need something to go right for Dayball's future to stay alive. And to prevent Malik, honestly, from being the latest giant to want to depart, a la Saquon Barkley. So that is my 2 ranked teams for this week. So we're down with 4. We're 1/8 of the way through the power rankings. As we move on, we will get into 1 team per week, focus more on 1 team per week going forward. There's only a few more 2 team per episode rankings. But with that said, we're done with that. And we will go into the storylines that have happened this week and end it with some Bills information. So for the final rundown of this episode, this is what we're going to cover. These are the topics that we're going to end the show with. So firstly, the tush push. I'm sure anybody who's watching this show knows what the tush push is. That's basically what the Philadelphia Eagles do every time Saquon Barkley gets tackled at the 1-yard line, which happens way more than you think it actually does. Jalen Hurts had so many rushing touchdowns just based solely off of that. It did not get banned. The Green Bay Packers came out and said, it was leaked, I suppose. They were the team that voted against it, or tried to implement it being banned, I should say. There was a lot of argument that the tush push caused more injuries. NFL released information saying there were no injuries from the tush push, either from last season or the prior 2 seasons. There are other teams that's trying it. You see the Ravens trying it, but not with the quarterback. They have Mark Andrews in there where when he can hold on to the ball and someone gets behind him and pushes him. So the success rate of the tush push was around 80%, I believe. And in comparison, I mean, the argument for it was like it just can't be stopped. No matter what you do, can't stop it. But I want to say the success rate for it was 80%. And then when you compare that to other quarterback sneaks, I want to say it was high 60s or low 70s. So no significant difference. I could understand it if tush push was 95% successful, but it's not. Next, goodbye to the chain gang. The thing that stands out, obviously, is there's a lot of other situations, but the playoffs stand out more. The Bills had that horrible spot on that Josh Allen sneak. So now, after many years of it should have been implemented, they are finally going to the electronic measurements. Chain gang will still be there as a backup plan, but it's basically no longer a thing. They will implement that electronic measurement system going forward, which is a blessing. No more of these question marks for sure. Seek ye own trade. That is about the number of trade players that are being given permission to go search for a trade. That includes the likes of Cup. They're trying to find a trade for him anyways. We just talk about the Rams. It's going to be curious to see what they do for sure. You have Cooper Kupp, likely to be traded. Matthew Stafford, they told him go out and see what he could find. I don't know how much of that is them trying to see where he could truly be traded to, or what these other teams are offering him, so they could say, hey, they're only offering you $40 million, so we're not going to pay you $50. But they also have Kupp, Stafford, and now Jonah Jackson, the offensive lineman, who was in Detroit before, and now they've gave him permission to seek a trade. You add those 3 to the list, along with Jonathan Allen from the Commanders, defensive lineman. I think that's more along the lines I think he believe he's going into his last year of his contract. He was part of that great defensive line that they had, who is now departed. But they drafted Newton last year from Illinois, defensive interior. They must be happy with what they have with him going forward to allow Jonathan Allen to try to find a trade partner. Harold Landry spoke on him last year as being one of the more solid pieces for the Tennessee Titans, but they are maybe looking to move more towards that rebuilding stage. Then you have Deebo Samuel. Deebo was great 2 and 3 years ago. Last year, fell off a cliff. Is he hitting not the wide receiver wall, but the running back wall? He's got a lot of running back mileage on him, even though he's the wide receiver. He gets hit a lot. His time in San Francisco is just over. His time is a mutual decision for them to move on. So he's going to be likely traded somewhere else. Along those same lines, Brock Purdy's in negotiations of an extension already. So there was speculation, maybe not from the majority of people, but it was a thought at one point. Would the 49ers move on from Brock Purdy as his rookie contract expired? But it looks like they're not. They're going to pay him, and I'm sure it's going to be $40 million at least a year for I believe he's Mr. Irrelevant. So 7th round pick, obviously, but he is going to get paid. It looks like his time in San Francisco is just getting started. The Kirk Cousins drama, I touched on it briefly earlier, but I tweeted out the other day, the most expensive quarterback as a backup since 2018, I believe, was Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo's made a lot of money to not do a lot as a quarterback, but he was the most expensive quarterback since 2018 to be a backup at $12 million per year, or $12 million cap hit, I should say, in that year. But Kirk Cousins, as currently slated, is the backup to Michael Penix Jr. in Atlanta. Kirk Cousins is going to have a cap hit of $40 million. Jimmy G was the most prior to this year at $12 million. Kirk Cousins, $40 million. Terry Fontenot, the GM of Atlanta, came out and said that he was comfortable moving forward with Kirk Cousins as a $40 million backup. There's no way on God's green earth that they will go forward with Kirk Cousins being the backup in 2025. No way. They will probably have to eat a majority of that contract, but they will trade him. Or let him go. I don't see it happening, but we'll see. Last topic that has happened is Abdul Carter draft news, I should say. He had the shoulder injury that was preventing him from participating in the combine this week. That's currently going on. Would have loved to seen him, but he was gonna compete or showcase his talent at his pro day. But now Drew Rosenhaus, his agent, has come out and said that he had a stress fracture in his foot. So it's 2 injuries now. They claim it's not going to affect him going into the season. I want to say they said it's not going to affect his pro day. But if you are one of these top 3, 4, 5 teams, how much is that going to affect his draft stock? I'm not really sure. We will see. But I don't know. It's curious because if he drops to 6, 7, 8, you're obviously taking him at that point. You take the chance and just see what happens. The combine today, the standouts, James Pierce ran a 4.47, the defensive lineman from Tennessee. It was just defensive linemen and linebackers today. That's pretty much all that stood out. Tomorrow is DBs and tight ends. Would love to see everybody participate in the combine, but it doesn't happen every year. People sit out. They don't want to hurt their draft stock, is what it is. And to end this episode, we always talk about the Buffalo Bills. And the biggest news out of Buffalo this week is the Khalil Shakir extension. In my opinion, top tier signing, elite signing, 10 out of 10, 100%. The Bills don't necessarily have a wide receiver one. They drafted Keon Coleman to be that go-getter, physical type on the outside. Not really. It didn't work out. Not yet anyways. See what happens. But Khalil Shakir, they signed him to a 4-year extension, which ties him to the Bills through 2029. It's worth up to $60 million. So it's basically 4 years at $15 million a year. $32 million guaranteed. You look back on the Bills draft, and in the same year, they drafted James Cook in the 2nd round, who's wanting a new contract, by the way, based on what he thinks he's worth. Bernard in the 3rd round, Khalil Shakir in the 5th round, and Benford in the 6th round. Great draft class, by the way. So when you look at Khalil Shakir, this is why I think it's a great signing at that number. Amongst 2024 wide receivers, he was second in yards after the catch at 618, which is great because when you look at his air yards per target, he was 3rd lowest among qualifying wide receivers at 5.4 yards. So he's taking those short passes and just getting extra yardage. 2nd most yards after the catch, 618. 5th in catch rate at 76%. 4th in drop rate at just 1%. So that just the difference between catch rate, drop rate is the drop rate just includes only the catchable passes in this scenario, 1%. He was 20. This is the biggest thing to me. Getting him at this number at 4 years, 15 million a year, basically. He will be 23rd in 2025 wide receiver money. That puts the likes of Christian Kirk, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Cortland Sutton all getting paid more than him. I think 99%, maybe 100% of NFL GMs would rather have Khalil Shakir in 2025 and going forward than any of those 4, and probably a few more. So I believe it was a home run signing by the GM of the Buffalo Bills, and to lock him up as a cornerstone piece of this franchise going forward. He will play a key role in what they do going forward, and I'm curious to see if he can become even more in this offense. So that's all for this week of Chasing Data. I appreciate everybody who stopped by. Next week, we will probably just do one team. I want to focus more on one team, which will be team number 28 in the power rankings. We will work our way through, and we will have some combine information because the combine will have a lot more numbers going forward from them, from what's going on this week. But until then, I appreciate everybody stopping by. Catch you next time.